what's up, man? Welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down a soulful sample, and pretty much this entire sample is made from the blueprint by the Vault Sounds. And yeah, without further ado, let's hop right into the sample breakdown. So we're starting this one off at 71 BPM, and the first thing I did was drag in this drum break, and it just sounds like this. Using drum breaks to make samples is kind of just like a cheat code because it's a nice little like starting off point to get that initial bounce, and it just makes it easier for me to just like make these types of samples when I have a drum break already in there. And the blueprint by the Vault Sounds has a ton of different drum breaks, all these ones here, all BPM labeled. All super high quality, all super hard hitting drum breaks. And yeah, there's pretty much a cheat code when making these samples. Next thing, I'm going into Contact and I'm grabbing the vintage upright room piano. And this specific piano is so good for making these soul samples. I went back into the blueprint and grabbed this MIDI. Sounds like this. The chord progression here is actually pretty simple. Pretty much all this is the G minor chord. You just break it down like this, it's just a G minor chord. And then pretty much after the G minor chord, they just stack some notes on top and then pitch down this bass note down an octave. And then this next chord is just an A minor, and then with this D note as the root note, and then just repeats into this bar. And this whole second half of the sample is the same exact chord progression. And then they just have these little like top line melodies just to help like transition the melody into the second parts. And then they're even switching up after this third bar here with this little like top line rundown. Yeah, also another cool method you could use is just arpeggiating some notes here. As you can see, it's playing this A minor and then it's like arpeggiating this A minor, and then same thing with these chords here. So it's pretty simple when you break it down, just a lot of extra notes stacked on top and a lot of different like top lines just to give it some more bounce. For the effects, we just got this RC20 on the vinyl 3 and then this EQ just cutting out some lows. Next up, we got this bass pattern, and it's using this organic bass from the blueprint. It sounds like this. All it is following the root notes, and I'm just playing around with some notes here and there. A big thing with these samples is adding in silence and these like little pauses. Yeah, doing that kind of stuff goes a long way with making it feel a little bit more vintage, a little bit more like played in, and also adds to the overall bounce of the whole sample. And for the EQ here, I really want to boost these sub and bass frequencies and then cut out a lot of this high end here. Just want to make it a little bit deeper. And then the last two things I'm adding for this first section is this vocal. It just sounds like this. This vocal is super fire, ties the whole sample together. There's not really any processing on this, it's just an EQ cutting out some lows and some unwanted frequencies. The last thing here is just this brass little like run, and it sounds like this. And then the last thing for this first section, and pretty much that plays throughout the entire sample, is just this tape noise. I wanted to give it like a vintage feel, and I feel like just adding this tape noise in just kind of adds that atmosphere to it. Makes it sound a little bit more vintage. And at the end of the video, I'm going to be breaking down how I can turn the sample into make it sound even more vintage, and so you're going to want to stay tuned for that. Some cool little sauce there. And then next up for the second section here, it's a lot of the same stuff, except I'm adding this guitar, and it's just playing the chords. And this is from the blueprint, and it's just this guitar one shot. For the effects on this, is just Valhalla vintage verb, an EQ cutting out some lows and boosting the highs, and then just this halftime just to slow it down. Next is this analog lab, and I'm grabbing this mic key preset, and this is from the blueprint analog lab bank that comes with the kit. And it's basically just like a piano type of sound. But what I did was render that sample out and then reversed it and pitched it up an octave. And I just chopped it up at every bar just to make sure it fits the chord progression. And it sounds like this. It kind of just adds some subtle texture to the background, but it really does a great job at doing that. And then the final thing for this texture is this up and down guitar effect. And this is from the blueprint, and it sounds like this. It's really subtle. You can really barely hear it at the end here. You just kind of hear like the little like string texture in the background. I thought I'd just add some more depth to it, and I just thought it sounded nice. So that's pretty much it for all like the elements of the sample. In terms of the arrangement and mix here, the second little like breakdown part, I just bare bones these chords from the piano. I just took out a lot of the top lines and those like arpeggiated notes and just kind of made it sound a little bit more bare bones and sound like this. Like I said, just a little bit more bare bones, nothing crazy. Just to add some more variation to the actual arrangement of the sample. And then in terms of the arrangement throughout the rest of the track, it's pretty much just the same stuff, repeating over and over again, just mixing out some sounds, adding the drum break in whenever, adding the vocals in whenever. And yeah, just kind of letting the vocal and like the piano kind of carry the whole sound. And like I've been talking about this whole video, the blueprint is game changer for making these types of samples. It was super easy for me to cook this up because these sounds are kind of just perfect for this like soul type of like vintage vibe. And you can also get a lot out of this kit with some other sounds as well, but I thought it just works really well with this kind of sound. The breaks are really dope. The drum kits are really cool with just adding like those like, you know, live drums to sound really high quality. The midis are absolutely goated. You can really just get great ideas. That's kind of how I started this off, with that drum break and the MIDI here with the piano. And it's just so good for getting these types of midis, and they just sound super good. The phrases as well are super cool, all live sounding stuff. The vocals, what I use in here, these are really cool vocal like phrases. And if you're interested in purchasing this pack, go check out the link in the description. If you guys purchase anything, I get a little bit of a cut from that. But yeah, some really dope sounds, and let's jump right back into it. So yeah, in terms of the actual mixing now, I feel like this is really important with these types of samples. A lot of these sounds are turned mono, as you can see here, and a lot of them are, you know, panned a little bit just to give it kind of more vintage type of feel. You want to push it to the middle with the mono and then kind of space it back out with the panning. And I think it just works super well with these types of samples. And I kind of do this with all my samples, but especially like these fake vintage soul type of samples is really dope for doing that. So now after you finish an entire sample, we can turn this into something a little bit more vintage now. So what I'm going to do is hit Control A and then Control Alt C, and we're going to consolidate this. So once you have that all consolidated out, what I like to do is go in the master, add a sound shifter or any type of pitching plugin, or you can just pitch it right in here. And we're just going to pitch it up by a couple semitones, or you can pitch it down if you want to. I like to pitch it up, and then I'm adding a reels, and it's just this like default preset, and I turn a little bit of the hiss and motor down so it's not too crazy, and then just a sue just to kind of tame those unwanted frequencies. And now what we're going to do here is go here and hit stretch mode, and then we can either boost the BPM or we can turn the BPM down a little bit. What I'm going to do is I think I'm going to turn it down to like 65 maybe. We transformed it into something a little bit more vintage. And yeah, you can do other stuff with this as well, but this is just kind of like a basic thing just to make it sound a little bit more vintage. So yeah, after all that is what the final sample sounds like. So that's pretty much it for the sample breakdown. I think this one turned out really dope. It's a little bit different than what I posted before on this channel. I don't think I really have any like soul, like vintage types of samples like this. The sound selection is really huge in this, and adding like a cool chord progression with a drum break is really an essential with these types of samples, and it just helps me be creative with it as well. Also guys, this is gonna be the last video in the studio. I'm gonna be building a new studio, and hopefully maybe the next video you guys will see it in there. And yeah, so say goodbye to the OG studio. It's been around for a while, but sometimes you gotta move on. So with that being said, that's pretty much it for the video. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.